I'm currently in the northeastern United States, about to make my way out west for a few weeks of chasing. So super excited to be just out in the field and enjoying Mother Nature at her finest. It's promising to see that on the day 3, the first day that I'll be out there this upcoming Wednesday, we already have a level 2 out of 5 risk contour for southern Caprock into the Permian Basin, so cities including Lubbock, Midland, Fort Stockton, this southern vicinity, and then a much greater marginal risk contour throughout most of the high plains here, kind of going up into Wyoming, down into Colorado and all that. I love chasing the high plains. It's one of my favorite areas to chase. So I'm super excited to be out there for a nice zonal flow setup. And what I mean by zonal flow setup, if we just pop over into our model viewer, we're just gonna take a quick look at the GFS. So, the long range model, then we'll confirm some things at the NAM, just to kind of get a broad sense of what's going on here. That's what I like to do. I just start with my big picture raw ingredients, kind of check a couple boxes this far out just to make sure that this setup is worth chasing. So currently right now, this trough that was associated with some previous severe weather over the past couple of days, ejecting over the Great Lakes, out over the northeastern United States, my neck of the woods, and then down this way, skirting out into our Wednesday time frame. Most obvious looking thing on paper, we're not getting a giant trough ejection or anything like that, but when it comes to the southern high plains, a subtle 30 knots of westerly or southwesterly flow is all you need down here to get some real special things. Usually that'll mean also slower storm motions, which is always nice. Just makes for great chasing conditions as well. I like what I'm seeing thus far. We're getting a little bit of a broad trough starting to set up, and if we kind of zoom ahead a little bit, you'll see what is to come this upcoming weekend. Models are pretty much in agreement on that, but kind of just looking at our Wednesday time frame, I'm definitely liking what I'm seeing here and just kind of some broad zonal flow over the southern high plains. Some kinks in the isobars here, which these little disturbances are more than enough to cause the divergence needed aloft to support severe storms. But if we dive a little bit lower and just kind of look at our next thing, so we know that we have upper level support, the next thing I need is moisture, right? I need moisture for storms, and kind of on this zoomed out level, we can see some of those deep 60s blues that we like to see on the College of DuPage model viewer.
The Chaser Academy is the best deal in storm chasing. Click the join button below this video and find out why.
And then going up into this way, it looks like the GFS is trying to resolve some sort of dry line feature here, which is good to see. If we pop over into the NAM in a second, it'll probably be a little bit more defined. But we have moisture in play, and that's good. I wouldn't be too scared by seeing some of these 50s dews and all that, especially in this part of Texas and even up into the Oklahoma Panhandle and western Kansas into Colorado. Because the important thing to note is that this is the high plains, and they earn that name not because of their orientation on the compass, but rather the elevation that they sit at. So, here at the DFW area and working our way east, you can see we can't quite make out the scale on this map that I just pulled up, but as you can see, this is a Caprock escarpment up here flowing down into the Permian Basin. So a lot of oil fields down this way, especially in Midland and Fort Stockton. But nonetheless, this is a pretty high elevation. This is like 3,000, 4,000 feet out here in far western Texas Panhandle into eastern New Mexico here. You don't need as much moisture out this way. Severe weather. Seeing this on the GFS is promising. And if we pop over to the NAM, keep in mind that the NAM has moisture biasing, but seeing 60s dew points this far west into the Panhandle is a good thing to see, especially with some of the terrain features out this way. The Caprock being a big one. We have Palo Duro Canyon over here, Canadian River Valley, the northern Panhandle. But kind of all of these geographic features are great for what's called orographic lift. So, if you're getting a dry line plus orographic lift from, southerly or southeasterly flow, even if there is a little bit of capping, it ends up working out in your favor as you'll get isolated convection and you won't get a massive blow up of storms. What I'm seeing thus far is very promising at this range. We just kind of pop over into our convective, kind of looking at mean layer CAPE here. This is more than enough to get the job done. Yeah, nearing 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE in areas. And as you can see, there's a little bit of convective inhibition here, that's SYN, but that's of no concern for me at this point, especially this far out. So with all that said, all the boxes are being checked in terms of this looking like a promising chase day. If we pop back over into the wording here of the Storm Prediction Center, they talk about this being primarily a large hail and severe wind threat, but I can see this easily becoming 2% into 5% type of SPC risk. Just looking at, we're going to use 700 millibars here because the higher elevation, 700 millibars behaves more like the 850. And if we go into the wind speed here, we're kind of getting we're starting to get a little bit of that turning with height, especially, kind of at southerly flow, directional shear. We're not going to get crazy speed shear, especially with only 30 knots of upper level flow, but that southerly component to this wind shear down here. And then if we pop into the 500 millibars, more westerly flow. So we're getting that turning with height. Just the fact that it's this part of the country gets me excited because this area, while it won't produce necessarily the strongest tornadoes, we should be getting some photogenic storms in the sense of getting that shear turning with height, as well as maybe some brief, weak, yet photogenic tornadoes. This part of the country is notorious for that, so I'm really excited, and I'll be talking to you guys probably the morning of, where we can dial in a more concrete forecast with observations and some of the more high-res cams and stuff like that. For now, that's a good promising sign to look at this far in advance a couple days ahead. So let's check back in a couple days.
All right, folks, it's now Wednesday, 9 a.m. Central Time, and just looking at the SPC real quick to start things off. Just got the 13Z update here. 2% regions, one here in kind of western Kansas, Oklahoma Panhandle, and one down Fort Stockton area. Just because of the logistics of where I'm at, I don't think I can make it down to western Texas in time. So I think I'm going to be forced to play this western Kansas into eastern Colorado, Oklahoma Panhandle target. But there might be some issues with it, which we'll get into in a second. Looking at the 12Z surface analysis just to get a broad scope picture of what's going on. We have a low forming off of the Rockies over here in southeastern Colorado. Probably going to be pretty stagnant, dry line dragging off of that, and then a nice stationary front draping its way up into northern Kansas and then further into the Midwest. The primary low up this way, no concern to us. We're focused on this low down here. If we go into our surface map, one of the issues that I think could be a problem today is moisture return. Though here we are, this is 13Z, just looking at the plains here, working our way up into the Kansas target here. 45, 47, 46 dew points. That's a little bit concerning. But as we go further south, we already have mid-50s. I think the only saving grace for today is the fact that this is higher terrain. So I'm hoping that we can at least get some mid-50s up this way, and that might be able to get the job done. Things might end up being pretty high-based, which is of some concern. If we go back to the surface analysis here, big outflow boundary from last night's MCS over eastern Texas. Nothing really established, I don't think, around us locally to work with. I think if anything, it's going to be this stationary front that's going to be the primary boundary if there's any interactions with anything up in western Kansas vicinity. That's at least my current thought. Let's take a look at some of the models. I haven't really looked at any of the recent runs. We'll take a look at the 12Z NAM run, starting with the moisture down here at the surface. That's indicative of what we're looking at right now. 40s dew points down there in the northern Texas Panhandle. This has some moisture advection. We're getting a little bit of pooling of 60s ahead of the dry line, which is good, at least here in this wrap run. We'll see if that'll be the case right around that 0Z threshold, so hopefully that's a promising sign. We'll take a look at the cams as well. Here's the HER. They're at 0Z. Ooh, this is concerning. 50s. Let's see if we take it a couple steps back. This might just be a mixing issue with the HER. Things not by 5Z. That's well into darkness at that point. We are getting a 60s tongue up that way, but we might be running into issues really late. We'll take a quick look at the NAM as well. NAM's going to be obviously a little bit more biased when it comes to moisture, but it seems to be really delayed. Still 0Z, yeah, 56, 54. The wrap might be the outlier here, which is of concern, popping into the 3-kilometer NAM. We might have some moisture issues today down in that target. We might need to just get a little bit further south and hope that we can get something off the Raton Mesa. We just go into the wrap real quick and just kind of get a sense of the overall instability. Definitely some instability in play. A little bit of capping. We should get some forcing with the dry line. It looks like the further north we go, there's definitely stronger capping. Do have some surface cape here. 0 to 3 kilometer cape. Most important cape when we're looking for tornadoes and stuff like that. If we go into our lapse rates, mid-level lapse rates are there. That's good to see. Low-level lapse rates, nice low-level lapse rates tongue going into this vicinity, which is good to see. Going into our lid strength, just to kind of get an idea. Things might be a little capped, but this might be good for supporting isolated convection if we can get some robust stuff to push through with the dry line. So 2% showing greater coverage of potential instability in thunderstorms. Strengthening low-level jet overnight. Okay. They don't mention anything about moisture, which is interesting. I think that'll be the key thing to watch today is the moisture. Currently in far eastern Kansas, there's no chance I can get down here in time for initiation. initiation. I'm going to be stuck playing this northern regime, and we're going to hope for the best. I think the next time I'm going to tune in here is probably on the go. I'm going to shut down the laptop here. Let's get this chase underway. .309 Central Time. We are nearing Liberal, Kansas, the initial target area that I had a little bit earlier today. Looking like we're getting a little bit of a CU field development here now. Nothing too crazy, but it's starting to get that look, that pre-initiation development you like to see, so that's a good sign. We're going to dive probably back into the models and observations in a second once we get there, just to get one last look at things before we get things kicked off into action.
This is Ethan from the future. When I started recording this clip, the audio was not recording for the beginning of it, but the main thing I'm talking about here is the moisture advection northward, which was better than how models were anticipating at this current time. I was in Liberal, Kansas, getting a sense of what was going on. Up to the north, we had some pretty good moisture advection and strong backed winds, which I considered heading up that way, but also there was still the threat further south into Texas, so my positioning was halfway in between the two targets in Liberal, Kansas.
30-degree temperature dew point spread, which is not great for tornadoes, but we're still getting some moisture advection northward, as this is going to be, I think, more of a late evening into a nocturnal event. And structure-wise, it should be a good show. If we just pop into satellite and radar real quick, we can see that cumulus field that's starting to develop out here, and a little bit of convection starting to take place over southeastern Colorado off of the Raton Mesa, which makes sense, and getting a little bit of also some CU development in the far western Texas Panhandle. So this is all kind of something to keep an eye on. It looks, if we just pop over into the HRRR real quick, it's still got its moisture issues, its over mixing issues, but we're just gonna look at a quick run here. It's been pretty consistent with putting a cell down this way over in the Texas Panhandle, northern Texas Panhandle. That might be something worth keeping an eye on. We're right dead in the middle here, so we can shoot north or shoot south according to what may look more favorable once things really start to initiate in the next couple of hours. However, I think the main thing that I really want to highlight here, if we just pop over into the wrap real quick, just get a look at a sounding. We'll just use everybody's favorite Supercell composite. We're just going to try to find an ideal sounding environment to pull from, just to get an idea of shear and stuff like that. Okay, so the main thing I kind of want to show here is the low-level Hodograph that we're getting. Definitely some great low-level curvature, which is promising to see. This type of Hodograph shape usually yields some very photogenic style storms, and depending on what we get for moisture content, the wraps here probably not the best indicator of what we're going to see. Maybe if we go a little bit more south here into the Panhandle, we'll get a better sounding, as I bet there's a little bit of an EML we're missing here. These types of Hodographs are really promising, so I think we're going to get a nocturnal sculpted supercell with this type of Hodograph and the timing of initiation. So that's what I'm looking forward to at this point. Tornadoes still on the table, as the SPC did ultimately go for an upgrade and add a 5%, which I was surprised by on the drive over here still. Obviously, last point we checked in forecast-wise, we were up this way near Kansas City. Now down here, Liberal, things I guess really improving, especially with the moisture content. Now, as a game of sitting and waiting and trying to see what will happen next with storms. So we have initiation. There's storms to the north here that have tornado warnings and stuff, but it's a little kind of congealed and gross. So I'm liking what's happening over the Texas Panhandle at the moment. I think we're going to check out that storm near Spearman, Texas, that's coming up into the Oklahoma Panhandle. So I'm gonna drop south here from Liberal, Kansas. All right, we're getting a little bit closer to our storm. It looks like we have a little bit of a base on it. Looks like a little bit of an inflow tail. We're approaching it from the northeastern side. We're gonna try to get down and behind it so we can look at the actual good updraft base part. I don't want to core punch this storm if I don't have to, and I think we should be able to if we just drop a little bit more south and let this thing meander its way northeast. Currently northeast of this severe warned storm. It's starting to, I think, reorganize a little bit. It's definitely pumping out some more lightning than it was earlier. I think it had to go through a little bit of a cycle. If you just watch on radar, you see the magentas are starting to come back, so maybe it's starting to beef back up a bit. And if we kind of see, we got a little bit of an inflow tail kind of on the forward flank of the storm here. We got some precipitation around the backside there.
And we're sitting in what'll be the forward flank as this thing really starts to mature. Sitting here, there's not a lot of road options here in the panhandle of Oklahoma, and really for the northeastern Texas panhandle for that matter. I gotta be smart, and I'm just gonna let this storm to come to me for right now, since I don't think it's gonna do anything imminent, and try to avoid the hail while it gathers steam and heads this way. No sense in going all the way back down south just to come back up this way while this thing's gathering steam. And this might not even be the storm of the day, so we're just being patient with our moves, if anything, especially early on in the chase. 6:35 local time. Our storm's starting to hook a little bit. I started dropping a little bit south because I started really liking the look of that Amarillo storm down there, but I think we're just gonna have to commit to this storm, at least for now. In worst case, maybe head down to this other storm that's heading towards Dumas as like a contingency plan, but I don't know. This thing's starting to look a little bit more interesting, I think, on radar, but the base is still rather benign. Like, I'm not seeing a definitive like wall cloud lowering or anything. Still pretty flat in the heart of the storm, which concerns me a little bit, but still got some time here, I think, to figure this out. I'm leaving the storm. It's looking flat, rather benign, and I think it's leaving a primed environment, heading north into an area that's already saturated. We're gonna make the trip south towards Amarillo. A little bit of a change of plan. We're going to this storm near Dumas, so this is still north of that Amarillo complex I was originally dropping south towards, but it's starting to structure out a bit, so I think we're gonna take the opportunity to get behind it and set up for some kind of golden hour structure chasing, because I don't think the tornado threat's gonna materialize much more until the low level jet really kicks in further south, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to get really far down there in time for that. So I think I'm just gonna take the opportunity to get out of the car a little bit and watch the storm turn into something beautiful. Now that's what it's all about right there. After a kind of a weird chasing day, come on, what an incredible storm. Wow. So we're time-lapsing that. I know the GoPro wide lens is probably not the best way to display the storm, but I'll include the time-lapse in this chase and explain. After a lot of milling around, it paid off in the end. This is what I was talking about, those hodographs. Nice sculpting going on, just a little bit of dry air coming in. Love the surface, really carves out that storm base. Just an absolutely spectacular looking storm. Just a couple of notes to round out things. The first thing is that don't have blind faith in model outputs. Obviously, there was some sort of discrepancy that the models were hinting on. All models are wrong, but some are useful. We shouldn't have just put blind faith in the moisture. Granted, we were chasing anyway, but if you were just discounting what the moisture advection output was going to be on some of the cams, then that would have taken you out of yesterday's chase. Granted, probably not the most tornadic of days still nonetheless, but the big thing is that we identified the Hodograph shape that would support some very photogenic looking supercells, and I think that's what we were able to accomplish with that second storm we ended up picking up on. I think that storm to the north there was just not in the best environment. It's a rather marginal environment overall, but that really flat looking base, not really a deep robust wall cloud, told me everything that I need to know. That storm wasn't strong enough to really get any sort of job done. Dropped a little bit south and then found those LP supercells that had really sculpted bases that made for some really great time-lapsing opportunities. So made the most out of some panhandle magic yesterday, and hopefully you were able to learn a thing or two. Thanks, guys.
Remember to check out those links in the description below, and then watch another video.